Hello, and welcome to Politics and Prose bookstore. My name is Madison Lyman, and I'm a bookseller here at Politics and Prose, where we host a wide range of in store events, along with classes and trips. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones so as not to disrupt the event. And when we go to the Q&A portion, please line up at the microphone to ask your questions. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome Lauretta Malloy Noble and LeeAnét Noble here to celebrate the release of their book, Black, White, Colored: The Hidden Story of an Insurrection, a Family, a Southern Town, and Identity in America. Black, White, Colored is an investigation into a little known historical tragedy, an insurrection that violently dismantled a thriving black community in Laurinburg, North Carolina. Laurinburg was a place where black and white residents lived and worked together, and where black families became landlords, business owners, and doctors. That progress was shattered on the eve of Election Day in 1898 when supremacist groups launched a violent attack, forcing black residents to flee and stripping black leaders of political power in what became the only recorded insurrection of its kind in American history. What makes Black, White, Colored especially urgent right now is that it reminds us that racial progress in the United States has never been linear and that it has always been contested and often violently so. The insurrection in Laurinburg wasn't an isolated eruption of racial hatred. It was a calculated effort to dismantle black political power, economic independence, and civic participation at the moment when those gains were threatening the existing order. In our current moment, this book asks us to consider how power operates not only through laws and elections, but through narrative itself. Who gets remembered? Who gets erased? And who benefits from that erasure? Drawing on meticulous archival research from census records to newspapers like the New York Age, and writing as descendants of Laurinburg's early black leaders, Lauretta Malloy Noble and LeeAnét Noble restored this history to its rightful place in the American record. Lauretta Malloy Noble critically acclaimed and has academic training spanning the sciences, psychology, music, genealogy research, and script writing. Her interdisciplinary work has garnered international recognition, including collaborations that have been inducted into museums worldwide. LeeAnét Noble is an award winning theater artist, in, educator, and cultural leader. A graduate of Howard University, she teaches history for George Washington University's MFA Classical Acting Program, courses at Morgan State University, and serves on senior staff at Shakespeare Theater Company, where she has launched and led numerous collaborations with Howard University. Lauretta and LeeAnét will be joined in conversation with Morgan Menzies, the creator and host of Pretty Little Bookshelf, a book club and literary platform dedicated to exploring significant themes and experiences in literature by people of color. Through initiatives like the Black Resilience Bookstore Tour and Reading Black Beyond February, Morgan works with readers in independent bookstores like Politics and Prose to expand how and when we engage with Black literature. Please join me in welcoming to Politics and Prose Lauretta Malloy Noble, LeeAnét Noble, and Morgan Menzies. And as they find their seats, I ask that you all please enjoy a short film.
This, my grandfather, Lawrence Malloy, who literally was a walking resume, a walking storybook, a walking photo album, and worked at Howard for at least 30 years after attending Howard as well. Made sure to tell his story all the time. So anyone that met him, after you met him, you would know something about the Malloy family. You would know something about his Southern community. You would know something about often Howard University if you weren't already at Howard University. So and a lot of times it wasn't believable because his stories connected to Black wealth during a time when we've only heard stories about the opposite. It connected to communities coming together with white allies where we rarely hear those stories.
Oh, this is the finest party. And this band, they are spectacular. Play it, boys.
If we move the supplies along this line, we avoid the main roads.
Agreed, but we need support in that county.
The Quakers near Guilford might help.
This is about the future of Laurinburg. Our children deserve equal consideration.
We now put the question to a vote. All in favor, raise your hand.
Education, the first Black boarding school, so many things. And I think that,
medical school at Howard.
yes,
That's often a conversation because his cousin was Dr. Drew's first or lead doctor in the discovery of the blood bank. So he's proud of that, proud of Howard. So that would be something we talk about a lot in regards to his community and how that got him here.
yeah, and the memories, the connection to the memories and holding on to the memories. The only way to do that is to document them. And he used to write his own books and journals. The reason this path, even though it wasn't the easiest writing path, but we had it mapped out because he took the time to write out his story. He took the time to tell his story to people so we knew it. We had somewhere to go off from. And a lot of times we don't connect with our elders because they hold those stories. They hold those memories that aren't in the textbooks. So the only way to hold on to them is to talk to them and communicate and connect and document.
My first inclination was to make this into a Broadway play. And I kind of thought, what are the things that are necessary? What do I need? What's fascinating? What's, what would build up to or make a story interesting for the theater? And I literally wrote to the library, the Malloy Jordan Library, and told them that, I saw a picture online. I said, hey, this is a time where he was at Howard University, the doctor, remember Malloy? And I'm interested in making this into a play. And they literally put that on the description of the picture that was at the library. So that's.
Yeah, and my mother started with the process of journaling, like taking notes, things that stick out, things that connect in, and then we together did further research. We started, we went to libraries, we looked at incredible archives of Black newspapers, and within those, they told a story. They described, the Malloy family came to town for the graduation from Laurinburg Institute, and others came from Howard University, and John C. Smith and the family gathered at so-and-so's house, and they circled around. And there were even some stories that had drama in them in the papers where, the two families came together, but they didn't quite get along, and one person raged up, and it was literally scenes that could take shape into theater, that could take shape into a screenplay, that could take shape into a series. So the real life incidents and things that happen tell the story. And if you know how to structure the story, that's where the plays come in. That's where you see, okay, this is the climax, this is the denouement, this is the rising action, the falling action. All the parts of the story were really there. So it's just, I think the way to turn these into theatrical moments or plays, or to really sit down with the research and the material that you have. And that's also one of the reasons we turned this into a book, so it can all be there in that form.
You could pull from it. You can make plays from different sections or segments of the story. So.
Do it with honor. How do you honor these figures and give them a full a full humanity of
And not just for the sake of just like drama, right? Because sometimes we like to put in additives and fill it, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And how do we stay to being true to the thing and making sure we stay within that guideline of ethics? And when do we cross the line? When is the crossing of the line?
Well, I had to do that a lot in writing the book, so that I don't offend or leave out or properly note and depict the characters in a light that they would want to be seen in, and that probably wouldn't be disputed. And I think that's what you have to look at.
Yeah, you have to look at their legacy, and I think that comes in reading the books. You know, to tell a story, to write a story, you have to read the stories that you have, and also talk to people, interview people, connect with them, so that you don't just hear what was written about them in the books, but you also might be able to connect with someone that connected with them. You know, when I was a student at Howard University, and my professor, Dr. Henry, would talk to us about different books, and she would then put in there that she took class with Toni Morrison. So I would talk to her. How was it speaking with Toni Morrison? How was it connecting? Yes, how did she teach? And that's the part about connecting with the elders and the people that connect to the stories, because then you can't help but to honor these figures in truth and respect, and because you are not only going from what the books give you, you're going from what the people give you that connected with them, and that goes in the research. As a young producer, somebody's looking into producing, read all the books. Like, we were surrounded with books and newspapers and clippings and so much, because when you do something that's based on facts, and that's a nonfiction piece in particular, you have to have references. So yeah.
Want to see how they got out of the trauma. They want to see the trauma and say, oh, how'd they get out of that? And that's not really a problem, because that makes it a healing device as well. But what was that?
Yeah, no, I think that's the part, is how did they come out? What happened next? That wasn't the end of it. Where did the story go after that? You know, there's a insurrection that takes place within the book, and we hit on that. We talk about what happened. We get into the very traumatic events that took place in the community, in the town. And then we get to the call that was made to Booker T. Washington after that, and what the community did after that, which is the era where my grandfather grew up seeing Black entrepreneurs, grew up, being the first family in town, period, Black or white, that had this Model T Ford. Being able to shift, and what are we focusing on? Booker T. Washington said, we're going to focus on education. We're going to focus on owning land. We're going to do these things that will give us a different footing and use these as our weapons. So I think, again, telling the full story. So don't just talk about the trauma, talk about what the prayer tables look like, talk about what the planning looked like, talk about what the organizing looked like, talk about what incited the traumatic event in the first place, which is, in this case, was the prosperity and things that were happening from two communities, Black and white, coming together and making a lot of change. So
I wanted to highlight the doctors in the family, the 5 doctors that went to Howard. Didn't all go to Howard, also went to Meharry. But that's what my first focus was that. I always get to this point where I say, well, you gotta read the book. It's in there. Because I went to Howard for music therapy, and I wanted to do message music and message theater and healing arts and things of this nature. And I did it, and that's what I learned. And then LeeAnét, you took this course.
oh yeah. Not here though.
In
right?
Ohio.
Yeah, in Ohio. Yeah. Well, and also in connection to that, at Howard, I took a course called African Diaspora History and Film. And it was such a cool class. I don't know if it still exists. The professor that did it, I think she went on to work for Henry Louis Gates. But it was this class where we would watch a film and we'd talk about the history, and then we would get into how those things connect, how the history connects with the film, and just take a real deep dive into the plot points. And most of the stories were stories that we did not know. And just thinking of, if you were to watch a film without having those professors guiding you, without talking about the historical events that happened before, after, and all around it, you would receive something completely different. And that's what's great about
It's therapeutic.
yeah, to talk it out after. And that's what we try to do within the book, because we didn't want to end with the insurrection.
Bang.
Right. We didn't
That's
want
the cost.
to end, Laurinburg has been affected by storms, affected by systemic blocks. So many things have happened in that community. And we didn't want to stop there. We stopped with questions, with more to think about, with how do we continue to build, how do we restore, how do we make sure people know the story, how do we continue to pass on the stories so that people leave thinking about those factors versus the traumatic
And
events.
it's not all of Laurinburg. Well, maybe it is now, I don't know. When we last visited, it wasn't all of Laurinburg. It was major sections where the Black history was. Yeah, that was affected.
Yeah. And this is not a isolated story, you know. There were just like Tulsa wasn't the only Black Wall Street community. These were
Wilmington.
communities across the United States that had this, and were, especially during Reconstruction, that were able to build together and to shift things, and had these really like utopia communities of gathering and connecting. And it's something that we could use now, the gathering and the connecting and the sitting on the porch and just talking to each other. It's
Relaxing and being calm and
Yeah.
just kind of letting go and getting it out. That's the kind of people they were.
Yeah.
Or you are.
Yeah.
Southern hospitality, just kind of chilling. No real serious issues. Well, you know, in the midst of talking, they're like really getting it out.
And that was on purpose. It was like, we have to go out and we have to fight what's going on, where the things that, you know, segregation, Jim Crow, all these things are happening. So we're going to make sure that within our community, we protect our joy. We connect and we celebrate each other. If somebody is getting married, or if somebody made a home run in the baseball game, we're gonna have food, you're gonna come over, we're gonna celebrate the baby's home run. You
No
know,
stress.
yeah,
And no stress, you know, it wasn't like, you know, you gotta show up a certain kind of thing in a way and you had to be big time. It was just everybody was accepted, especially if you were low income, they'd reach out to you and try to embrace you.
and figure that out. How do we build each other up? That's how a lot of these communities started. Somebody would buy a good amount of land and then give it to other Black people who needed a home or needed a property, you know, for like $1 or like, you know, like for some change, because the goal is to bring people in that way. We have communities like that in Maryland where, you know, the descendants of Frederick Douglass bought land and said, here, I'm gonna give it to people that I know can come in and build and make a Black community that is prosperous. Yeah.
How do we look out for each other? And that's how, it's in the book.
Yeah.
So buy it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I like most, is the whole, you all are like Rios in the whole thing. You're bringing all of the story together, but it's not like I'm gonna sit down and force this stuff to you, right? And it inspires one to think about other communities. It inspires you to say, what can I do to help? And I like that, you know, you all are going to go into the whole thing about, you know, film and everything is too, that it does not end on that note of, my God. And it comes out, because that's the sensationalism a lot of people like. That's like, what are you gonna do to get money in the seats? But this is going beyond that. This is really the healing thing that, you know, Lauretta keeps talking about and saying, goes all the way back to the music therapy and everything and stuff. It's where the healing is. And sometimes you hit them with the sensational, but the healing still has to come. And I think responsibly, you all are very extremely responsible in how you have taken on things. And I think this is what we're missing.
Yeah.
Right? That porch conversation.
Yeah.
That you're caring for one another, but I'm still passing on information, but it's not in a way to traumatize you.
Exactly.
Right? It's in a way to bring us together. I'm looking out for you. We are one.
Yeah.
You know, brilliant ladies. Any thoughts for our the last thoughts for our any students, or any advice for them if they're trying to go down this road in a connection of some sort? And the thinking of just about, because we have to continue to tell our stories.
Yeah, it's
Tell your stories.
you have to tell your story, write it down, talk to someone, record it, videotape it, talk to your elders, learn more about your story from them. You know, we just had our aunt just passed away, and I was going through my phone and I realized, wow, so many times I asked her about her life and recorded it. So I have that thing. I did that, yep, like sit down with them, record them, telling their story.
But you should be talking to them all along. They should not be on the outskirts of your life just because they're, you know, getting older. you can learn a lot from your own history.
Yeah, that's the part. And everything's not online. There's so many resources and even knowing how to research. Gosh, that's a practice to itself. If you Google something and it takes you here, then you need to take the hints there and go to the next place, take the hints there and go to the next place and keep unraveling. Midway while we were doing this book, we found a newspaper from like 1903 that was about the community, and there was nothing else like that that got into the way the community operated. And it was a 13-year-old Black boy that founded that newspaper, and there's only one page left in the archives. So, and it was like ripped up, literally like tattered and ripped, like that's it.
This whole process was like God said, here, oh, look over here. And it was just all very spiritually connected and just kind of things were woven in. Like it was supposed to be found. It was supposed to come to you. And even if you put it down, we would get a message like, the street corner name is Leland.
Yeah,
Or,
while we're looking for more information on Leland.
and we're like, why is this town in this street and it's called Leland?
Yeah,
Is there a connection?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the part, like you have to dig and connect and know the process of researching, because the stories are waiting to be told.
(1865). Following in the rituals his father taught him, every morning, from the top of his lungs, amplified by the echo of the shower, my father would sing the refrain of Hattie E. Buell's 1877 hymn with more passion than a Southern Baptist preacher at offering time. I'm a child of the King. I'm a child of the King. Jesus is my Savior. I'm a child of the King. His North Carolina dialect would blare out every king as king before switching to the Lord's Prayer as he got dressed in one of the hundreds of suits that filled more than one closet. He saved the white suits for dances as it matched his white Cadillac. This was my morning soundtrack on the top floor of our home in the mid-90s. His song and prayer were rooted in his childhood, and I knew better than to interrupt him before he was finished. When my father spoke about his daddy and how much William did for him, this 6'3" man would instantly break into tears. His cries were audible moans. My daddy was a great man, and he taught me everything. He was a great man, he would blurt out as he cried. My father was never afraid to shed a tear. He wasn't a fearful man and would quickly tell you he was a prize fighter during his army days and knew how to use a rifle from his teen years. If I or my daughter ever talked back to my father, he'd say, I could never talk to my daddy like that. And then he'd tell us that he had to call his father sir, and that William never spared the rod. Fear and safety were instilled in my father, much like in Christianity. He feared his father, but at the same time, he knew William would protect him and take care of his needs. My grandfather lived a long life for someone born in 1865, dying in his 90s. My parents had me in their 40s and late 30s, and I never met him. Looking at his photos, it's hard to decipher his personality. My image of him was formed by my father's stories and my imagination. I figured he stood 7 feet tall and that his life was solely dedicated to traditional fatherly duties. He never wore a smile in any photo. This was perhaps stemming from Frederick Douglass's admonition to black people to always present ourselves in photos with dignity to combat stereotypes of minstrelsy.
A backyard war. After the government takeover, racial hierarchy laws and extreme segregation laws upheld in the landmark Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson, such as those prohibiting blacks and whites from sitting together in public, further separated and halted relationships between black people and their white allies in Laurinburg. The number of black children in school dropped from 87% before the insurrection to 65% in 1904 after school funding decreased. The new county schools designated for black students were poorly supported and became among the worst in the state. The public school system founded by the supremacist groups would remain in place for the next 80 years. Black communities throughout North Carolina have been ravished. With the creation of Scotland County, Richmond was severed. What would the black community in Laurinburg do to recover, to restore, to rebuild? William had a newborn girl and 2 young sons. The trauma from the attacks had put a strain on his marriage. For strength, the community drew on their religion that their oppressors assumed would keep them in their place. But their African roots were infused with secret codes when they prayed and sang the songs of their ancestors. They were reminded of what they had overcome and their ability to escape, as well as their power to heal mentally, physically, and spiritually. Accustomed to moving through trauma, they called on their faith, their education, and their history to create a strategy for moving forward. In the years of Reconstruction, black people in what became Scotland County bought land and started businesses. Walter P. Evans, an elder in the Presbyterian Church and a member of the same secret society as my Uncle Emmett, was originally from Wilmington and owned a popular mercantile store on Main Street in Laurinburg. The store opened in 1884 and had customers of both races. Evans was targeted by an angry mob after the massacre. They surrounded his house and called him out. Luckily, a doctor said he was sick on his deathbed with pneumonia, causing them to leave. Knowing that change had to start with education and safe black schools, Evan concocted a plan. In 1904, the Tuskegee Institute was all the buzz as a prosperous black college. Walter P. Evans reached out to his founder, Booker T. Washington, as well as William J. Edwards of Snow Hill Institute, a black school in Alabama with as many as 400 students. Evans envisioned a private institution focused on trade and education for black students. Washington sanctioned a new school, and Evans called Emmanuel McDuffie, a former Snow Hill student, and his wife, Tenny, for assistance. They moved to town to start Laurinburg Normal and Industrial Institute. William had land in his construction company. This was his weapon against the barriers that he had ready when needed.
Country to town. Lonzy's family wanting to check in on their fancy daughter and sister and her new wealthy husband came to visit DC from Cleveland. Lonzy made sure the house was pristine. This was a big trip for her mother and stepfather, Helena and Charles Haley, and her younger sister, Prunella Norwood, later Prunella Kynes. Lawrence wanted to impress them as well, since he had only met them a few times. The Wilson Line was a luxury excursion steamboat that offered daily trips between Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, Virginia, and other points of interest. Lawrence and Lonzy had been waiting for an occasion to take a boat trip, and this was it. As they drove along the streets of their city, the couple pointed out the buildings where they worked. The group arrived at that dock in Washington, D.C., dressed in their Sunday best, and joined the line to board the grandiose steamboat, which was heading to Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington. An attendant for the Wilson Line refused to let them board due to their race. The family spoke up instantly in a flurry of emotions and frustration, stating that this discrimination was illegal. They went promptly to the office on site, where an official informed them that the attendant was supposed to allow them on board. When they returned, they were refused a second time. They went to the office again, and this time they were told that that attendant was following company policy by not allowing colored people to board. Lawrence let them know that the family would be taking them to court. The company representatives were not concerned. The family returned to Dodd's house and began to discuss their case and organize. Lawrence was upset, but found relief in the family working together, with the women leading the charge. The case was underway. Launcie graduated from Howard University in May 1951, while Lawrence continued his studies to become a doctor. At her graduation, Launcie was 5 months pregnant with their first child. In September 1951, she gave birth to a son. Life was looking up. A few months later, the verdict on the lawsuits was released to the press. The Wilson Lines has been ordered by the Interstate Commerce Commission to discontinue its policy of catering to white patrons only. The ICC order came on as a complaint filed by Mrs. Helena Haley, Charles Haley, Lauretta Malloy, and Prunella Norwood, who sought to purchase tickets and were refused on September 15, 1950. They won the case, or did they? We can't read the whole book. That's for you to do. Here's what some have said about black, white, and colored.
Black, White, and Colored is a bold and unflinching reclamation of history America tried to bury. The story of the Laurinburg insurrection deserves to be held alongside Tulsa, Wilmington, and Rosewood as a defining tragedy of American apartheid, a reality that all too many have failed to acknowledge and reckon with. Told through the lens of a proud, successful black family that found ways to thrive both before and long after the violence. This book is more family history than exhaustive chronicle, a deeply personal account that lifts this story out of hiding and challenges us to reckon with what was stolen and what remains unhealed.
In this moment of anti-Black erasure, and in this moment of quiescent, let's hail and salute Lauretta Malloy Noble and LeeAnét Noble and their extraordinary book, Black, White, Colored. Bakari Sellers, author of My Vanishing Country and the Moment. Black, White, Colored doesn't just peel back the layers, it rips the wallpaper clean off history's walls. Lauretta Malloy Noble and LeeAnét Noble serve up erased Black excellence and economic swagger with truth, heart, and a side of you didn't know, but now you do. A must-read excavation of legacy, lineage, and Southern grace under pressure. Erica Alexander, narrative strategist, cultural architect, and co-founder of Color Farm Media.
I am so excited about Black, White, Colored. Lauretta and LeeAnét Noble's storytelling is captivating and holds the reader riveted. Richly textured details of the Malloys and community where Black people worked and succeeded in every aspect of the community. These people flourished in spite of the race and the time. Told in a manner that allows, Black, White, Colored takes its place as must-read. There was Black Wall Street, Oscarville, Wrightsville, and now the unforgettable Laurinburg, as penned by the remarkable mother-daughter writing team, Lauretta and LeeAnét Noble. Descendants of the Malloy family are ready for prime time. Phyllis Yvonne Stickney, American actress and comedian.
The truth of our history is so important and all too often left untold. I recently worked in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had the opportunity to deepen my understanding of the massacre in the Greenwood community. When I read Black, White, and Colored by Lauretta Malloy and LeeAnét Noble, it resonated with my soul. I am deeply grateful to these two powerful women who dared to share their family's history with us. Their testimony is filled with lessons and inspiration for us all. Keith David, 3-time Emmy and NAACP Image Award winning actor, singer, and voiceover artist. My name is Michael Yates. I am the grandson of Verdell Elliott and Hilda Faye Yates.
My name is Cameron Holder, and I am the granddaughter of Jeanette and Dennis Lee and Billy and Alicia Holder.
My name is Amber Nicole Mayberry. I'm the granddaughter of Gloria and Robert Chambers II and Pauline Mayberry and Dr. Claude Antonio Mayberry of Gary, Indiana.
I am Travis Xavier Brown, and I am the great-grandson of Monroe and Etta Mae Miles, and grandson of Mary Miles.
That's nice. Good evening. How is everyone? Good. So, the power of storytelling is evident, and the way that you have the written word, we also had a visual, and then we had our readers. Can you talk us through your inspiration and the ways that your grandfather inspires you with the power of storytelling?
Yeah, we couldn't stop my grandfather from telling his story. Every opportunity, you would sit down with him. In school, I was rather talkative at times, and I knew if I wanted to get away with something, I could give my grandfather's phone number instead of my mother's phone number. And when I would return to class, the teacher would say, "Well, I learned a lot about your family talking to your grandfather. I was, just trying to tell him what you were doing in class, but I got your whole family story." And so he literally told his story wherever he went. You go into the giant grocery store and the cashier knew his story. If you got a chance to talk to him, he knew. So he was constantly storytelling. Before we jump in further, I just want to give a shout out to our actors over here again. Yes, they are all professional actors. They've performed on Broadway. They've performed in regional theater and graduate studies and a lot of different things. And they also are all some current and some former students of mine. So, yes, thank you so much for lending your talents.
One of them is actually from the Laurinburg area.
Yes. North Carolina, right there, and right here. So, yes. But yeah, so that's it. It just constantly, he was a griot holding on to the stories. And when you came around him, he would share them with you. And you would learn not only about him, but you would learn most likely something about your own lineage.
And I think especially during this time when we are losing our history and it is under attack, the ways that you are preserving yours and making sure that we know it is powerful. And so I'm curious about your relationship and how storytelling has been passed between the two of you.
Well, for this book, let's start. I consistently talk to my daughter about our history and what I wanted her to know. And I didn't really realize she was talking to my father that much. And I was kind of like, what? What did he say? And I found out by doing the book, and she started telling stories, to me for the book, and I'm thinking, what? So, but I shared a lot with her, and I'm going to be honest with you, she didn't believe me. It took a minute, and she said, "No, Mom, what?
Mom, but we don't really, because we didn't do those things now. So to have that as a legacy, and we're not talking about it, and we're not, excited over it because of the era and the time that these things happened. It was kind of dark, but then we had to pull through that darkness. And so to comfort our family, it would be spoken to us in almost like code. And you'd have to go, what? What do you, okay. And then you'd ask an actual question and you would get an answer and you go, oh, okay, I thought about it. So just putting it all together, I would talk to her about this. And then eventually I said, okay, you got to get on this bandwagon because I'm finding some really interesting things. And some of it's really scary and some of it's really interesting and enlightening, and just stuff she should connect with. And she connected with it very well eventually. So.
Yeah, that's basically what she said. There were some things I was like, this is just unbelievable, and but as we dug, and then we had a lot of conversation. I learned more about my mother in this process as I learned more about my grandfather and his history and the family and the history of HBCU. So it was such a learning process within the writing process. Yeah.
And education is fundamental to your family and the ways that you all have thrived. And so, can you talk about Howard and how and other Black institutions and the ways that they have really influenced your family and afforded you different opportunities that you think are essential to your legacy?
I think as a child, I had to figure out what Howard was because my grandfather's asking me. I went to Harvard University. And I'm like, Harvard? What? But it was such a big part of our household. You walk in and you see the Alpha Phi Alpha paddle, and then you see the Howard University plaques on the wall. And he worked. My grandparents never left Howard. They never left. They kept going back and getting more degrees. My grandmother went back to get her doctorate in her 60s. They worked there. They never stopped. Even after my grandfather retired after many years, we would walk in the house and say, where'd the piano go? Oh, I gave it to Howard. It's like, okay. But it was just constant. So it was embedded in so many ways. And I didn't realize until diving further into the history, the HBCU experience as a whole, that my aunts went to Hampton Institute before it became Hampton University, and that they went to Meharry. His brothers went to Meharry, and they went to Johnson C. Smith. And so they hit so many of the HBCU circuit, I'll say.
Before they called it that.
Yeah. So it was, and they were very much connected to the Booker T. Washington path in some ways, and it was what they knew. It was their way out in the community in Laurinburg. Coming out of slavery, you had the Black children were running to get to schools. They were running to get to schools. They had been deprived for so long of education. It was exciting. It was we want to learn. We want to dig into these books, these things that have been held back from us, and dig deeper. And it was also these HBCUs were, they were a place of respite. It was a place where you could focus on school. You could focus on how we're going to build when we come out without having to focus on, living, I'll say. Yeah.
They're very important.
Yes.
So we'll open it up to audience questions now. If you have one, you can go to the microphone here. And make sure you speak closely to the microphone.
Okay, thank you so much for telling this story.
You're welcome.
What is the state of race relationships today in Laurinburg? And I might not be surprised. And second, what is the awareness of the residents of Laurinburg of this?
One of my first interviews was with the residents of Laurinburg, one being a gentleman that ran the St. Andrew's Museum attached to the school, and the other was, of course, Mr. McDuffie from the McDuffie family. I even talked to Earl Smith and Ben Vereen and other people that lived there or were from there. My family's from there, so my cousin, I talked to him quite often about Laurinburg. He grew up there. Yeah.
It is.
That's how it started.
Yeah, Laurinburg has experienced. There's a few different things as we discussed. There's been a lot of storms that have literally affected the economy there, and when the economy dwindles or has that becomes the focus, right? Is survival. So you have many who are in survival mode after the storms, but they still have annual celebrations where they celebrate Scottish culture and Black culture together. So
They're proud people.
You have things like that do take place, but it is still a space that needs healing, needs help, needs the rebuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still connected to Laurinburg?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The Laurinburg Institute has gone. They're trying to figure out how to rebuild. They're still the first Black boarding school, the oldest Black boarding school in the United States, and now they're working on going virtual and seeing how they can function like that because of the damage in the community due to the weather
Rebuilding.
and other things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Ooh, we have time for one more question.
Hey, so when I first heard about this story, you said that your family didn't know it in a lot of ways. That could you tell us about that, and also sort of what you discovered about who was in your family? Because that's pretty fascinating.
The children didn't know it. Of course, the adults did, but the children, my child, my brother's children, cousins and so forth, the younger ones. And I wanted them to know. I wanted them to be a part. I wanted them to be proud of their legacy and to build on it.
Yeah.
To use it as a stepping stone of something to be proud of in a way of looking towards their future. That's always a good feeling.
Yeah.
To know who you are, where you were from, where your family's from, and how they felt about it. How did they come together? How did they solve problems in the past? And so how can we solve them now by understanding our past? Why should we stay connected? After all we put into it, should we just disperse and go our own way? Or should we stay connected in a loving way, in an understanding each other way? How do we understand each other better? If you don't know your past, or if you don't know the past of others, how do you understand them now and what they've gone through and why they are like what they are like currently?
Yeah. And there were things that we knew and things that were out there, but as we were mentioning, like they're waiting for you to tell them. You know, we have my great grandfather. He wasn't able to practice medicine, but he was a doctor. So he made sure he put all of his children, all of his sons, through medical school. And what that created was, you know, now there's in Winston-Salem, there is the Malloy Jordan Library, where they bought land using the money that they made from their medical careers to provide libraries for Black students there. And that library is still there today. We also have another relative, one of the doctors, who was the first in a baby. I'm not going to try to say the name of the procedure, but it's a procedure where you take all the organs out of the child and then you put them back in. And he was the first to do that in a child. And, you know, we also get into the fact that me as a child and my mother, we got to spend a lot of time with Dizzy Gillespie, he roomed in our house, in our family house, while he was a student at Laurinburg Institute, and became best friends with my grandfather. And so that was his lifelong best friend. And we found out later doing research that they were actually cousins. But
Which makes it easier.
You know, but yeah.
The library is my grandfather's brother's family the library was named after them as well, or after them. And our whole family, in-laws and my grandfather's brothers, and they all went to some type of college and med school or nursing school. The women went to nursing school.
Yeah. And they worked with Dr. Drew. They worked with Dr. Drew on the blood bank at Howard University.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Please give our authors and our readers a round of applause.